Welcome to the Be That Healing Girl podcast. And this episode is all about how to stop overthinking when the vacation ends. So let's say if you'll know if this episode is for you, if you have gone on a trip, maybe it's a weekend or a whole week extravaganza, and the moment that you get on the plane or the last dinner happens or the moment you land, you are already spinning out in your head around, oh my gosh, did this trip mean as much to them as it did to me? What's next? What about that fight? Ooh, I'm seeing that they're being a little annoyed. Quotation marks for that. If that is anything that you experience, then this is a really good episode for you, and we're gonna get into it. So, if you're new here, my name is Claire. I am a relationship coach, and I love helping overachieving Type A girlies who slay in their career but struggle in your relationships with anxiety, relationship anxiety specifically. Then you and I are vibing, honey. So I'm really excited to dive into this. And I just have to say, while I was out of office, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but um, I did a random check on how the Spotify podcast is doing, and I have to say, I was just literally floored. There are so many high fives because to me, you pressing the 5-star button is a high five to me, was seriously blew my mind. And I will say, if you are listening on Apple, girl, get on it, because Spotify, like you guys, there's about 50-50 Spotify or Apple. So if you're on Apple, send some love. It means so much to me to get a high five. Like I'm literally, it's just me and the microphone and you right now. So it means a lot when I just see those reviews. It just keeps me going and keeps this podcast fresh to death. Also, I haven't recorded a podcast in a minute. So just be prepared. If you are here listening for somebody who's perfect, this is not the podcast for you. And just a little insider knowledge is I don't edit these podcasts. This is just literally one take. That's it. And because I believe perfectionism is stops progress. And if you want your relationship to grow, you can't be perfect because no relationship is perfect. So just FYI. Okay, let's dive into it. How do you stop the overthinking, the overanalyzing, playing out the whole trip and wondering what's next? This is hitting home so hard because my husband and I, and just in case you're really brand new, I used to be anxiously attached. My husband was avoidant, and now we have an earned, secure relationship and marriage. But we went to the Philippines and Japan for an entire month. One entire month. And I say that because not because it was not because it was hard with him, but it's just like a month out of town is a whole experience. And also we travel full time, so imagine packing, we have a travel trailer. Imagine packing your entire house before you leave for a month. And then imagine unpacking your entire house when you get back for a month. Anyway, I could do another episode on like why Craig and I travel full time and just the highs and lows of that. But we were out of town and traveling for a month to Japan and the Philippines. And this is actually not just, this was so significant, which I really believe adds to the charge of the overthinking, overanalyzing that can happen. So the more significant we make or internalize or imagine a trip is, then it has impact. But this was really impactful because, I mean, this is my husband seeing just important history, right? This is him seeing the town where my mom and dad met, where my mom went to medical school, to go to our family property and family house where the ocean's our backyard. I mean, I just have this really clear, just it's burned into my brain moment where I'm behind Craig, it's Craig, my mom, and me, and I'm behind the three of them, and I'm just like, wow, this is so magical, and just took in the moment and being in the present of this is just so significant for my husband to see. This is where my mom grew up, and this is so powerful in our family lineage and generation. And then we walk out into this beautiful backyard, which is essentially a bay, and we just had a great time, and it was just really powerful. So significant moments like that built a lot of connection and a lot of meaning into the trip for me and for him, but for me, um, And the reality is, and one thing that I will always say and be a proponent of to the best of my ability is that Craig and I are not perfect. And I'm really going to start including the language. We have an earned secure marriage because it didn't just happen overnight. We both had to work at it on ourselves, together, and it's been a journey. But one thing that I think is important to know is that I just want to like get real with you around what it really takes to heal your overthinking, your overanalyzing, the second guessing, all of that. It really boils down to your ability to be super gentle and to be present with yourself. And all that being said, I have done a lot of work on healing myself, whether it's been just my whole like line of what I've done. I've been in therapy since I was 16. I've done cognitive behavioral therapy. I've gone to, I've done it all. I've done spiritual work, which is mostly where I operate from now. And what I have to say is that these symptoms of anxiety, relationship anxiety, and anxious attachment don't necessarily go away. You just get better at handling them. Okay? That's like just the straight up thing. And I think that's also what makes what I teach very unique, because I'm not here to lie to you or sell you snake oil that, oh, it's going to be great. And like, because that's just not, it's not, to me, that's not relatable. I can't connect with somebody like that. And one of the things that makes my work with clients so powerful is that I really get it. I get the path that you're working on and you're walking. So I say all that to be said, and just this whole background is the moment we got onto the plane leaving Manila on the way back to the States, I was overwhelmed with emotion, just mostly because this trip was so powerful. I could feel just the energy and the power of what it was like for my husband to experience my culture, for all these memories that I created with my family, my niece, and just seeing cousins that I hadn't seen in a long time. I was just overwhelmed with emotion, and because I was flooded, this little sneaky habit of overthinking popped in, and this is real insider scoop, okay? And I even caught myself saying to my husband, "Hey, let's come back in a couple months." And by the way, there's nothing wrong with saying that. And I just was noticing what was really happening underneath the surface for me, which was I was feeling scared. And when we feel scared or we feel threatened, we feel vulnerable, really, all of those pieces are very connected. It makes us kind of go back to old patterns. And in that, my overthinking, overanalyzing muscle, which has had years of getting strong, and I've just gotten better tools on how to deal with it, went to what's next. Let's plan the next thing. And it was interesting because on the plane ride, I was like, wow, like that's so interesting that I'm already thinking about the next trip and imagining what that could look like and planning and just deepening and getting back into my nest and really looking at that was super interesting of, wow, this is just something that I do. And when I look at that moment when you kind of things start to shift gears, and if you know what I'm talking about, where everything's great, you're in the moment, and then like the bags start packing, right? And then we start to feel a little funky, we feel vulnerable, we feel scared of what's going to happen, and we tend to second guess. Like, and what I mean by that, some of the indicators are you've had a great time. And let's just say nothing weird happened. You just start having the feels, right? And a lot of times one of the big things that can come up is second guessing. The second guessing, well, did they have a good a time as I did? And wow, you start to wonder about what's going to happen when you get there, and you second guess, well, they're just maybe going to be over it. Maybe I was too much, or maybe they didn't have a good enough time. Maybe I wasn't funny enough or sexy enough. Oof. I can't tell you, I put a post up on my stories, and there was a lot of you that said there was a lot of second guessing about how attractive you were to your partner, like feeling threatened as though there aren't going to be bigger tatas and bigger butts or smaller waists and snatched whatevers. I don't know. Is our waists snatched? I don't know. How do you? I think that's like a new thing. I don't know. Snatched. The cheekbones are snatched. I don't know. Snatch it all. But this is like second guessing. Even in the moment on the vacation, second guessing, does my partner find me attractive? They're there with you, honey. Literally. And most the people that I love to talk to, if you're here, I'm really talking to the girl that you know they're a good person. Like, you know. And there's a whole different kind of sector out there that you're not sure, but I'm really talking to the person that's, you know, that they're actually good and you might be the drama. The second guessing is really kind of a big issue. It's problematic. And what it all boils down to is self-trust. And I love this topic. It's actually why I'm teaching a whole month around self-trust in the Healing Girl Gang. And what I just absolutely know, and if you don't know about the Healing Girl Gang, I'll tell you more about that in a second, but self-trust, if I could just nut it down to what self-trust really is, it's actually a feeling. And when you have self-trust, and I'll just speak for myself. I'll speak about myself because this is I know what it's like to not have self-trust. I know what it's like to be on a beach and just be so self-conscious in your body about your waist and drinking too much, and are you bloated, and how does my butt look, and my stomach's sticking out, to I don't care. And honestly, if I see a hot chick, I'm like, dude, that chick is hot. And Craig will say, yeah, she's hot. And it's not because and I'm not pointing her out because I'm threatened by her, but it's literally like attraction's normal and healthy. So I just trust myself that, yes, we literally together can look at a great body and that doesn't bother me. Truly. I'm not just saying that. Truly, it doesn't bother me because he's with me. And I trust myself. I trust myself that even if Craig did want to bang that person and he was going to get up or get her Instagram or whatever, then I trust that, I'm not saying that wouldn't be painful in that moment, but I trust that I would be just fine. In fact, if he did that, he wasn't really even mine. So I want to give you the contrast of self-trust, and when you have self-trust, that is how the overthinking gets real quiet. It gets real quiet. It's not even there. It's just like barely. Because when you trust yourself, when you go from second guessing into fully trusting yourself, into fully trusting no matter what happens, fully trusting no matter who they think is sexy or not, when you trust yourself, P.S., they find that incredibly attractive. Really feel into this, have you seen a girl? We all have seen a girl walk into the room and she may not have the straightest teeth or the plumpest lips or whatever, but she is just freaking sexy. Those type of women, they trust themselves. They trust being in their body. They trust being in that room. They trust. They're connected. They're embodied. They're grounded. And so if you want to stop the overthinking, one of the first things that you have to work on is self-trust. So we are working on this all month and the different levels of the Healing Girl Gang. And if you are new to the Healing Girl Gang or you're curious about it, there's the show notes down below. And there's different levels. I'm so excited too because it's September 2024 and we're rolling out level 2. And level 2 is about the do. Level 2 is about the do. And I just love that because we are going to be focusing on literally the do in what is the action, the tangible action step to actually stop overanalyzing. And overanalyzing to me is a whole connected, similar to, but very different than self-trust. So we're launching that. And also, if you are watching this is in September 2024. If you're watching this months later, we will be having a store. And the store will be open when it's open. It's not open yet, but if you are seeing this podcast or listening to the podcast and you like are hearing me talk about self-trust and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't see it on there. The store will have single classes and bundles. It'll have a whole smorgasbord for you to choose if you're watching this in the future. And speaking of healing girl gang, this is one of the fun parts, because one of my desires for the podcast is to have like mailbox thing like that, and we have incorporated that in the Healing Girl Gang. One of the other perks about being in the Healing Girl Gang is that the members, they vote on a question, and this is a hotline question that came through. So I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to give you my download. Okay. This is from Jennifer. Jennifer says, I've got a good man. I really do. He does so much for me, acknowledges my anxiety, lets me word vomit all over him when I need to. I love that. And some of you have a guy like that. I can send him a text and say, babe, I'm in my head, help me, and he can snap me out in an instant. But then when he withdraws, it's brutal. I know he's dealing with trauma, both military and childhood, but the self-isolation can come out of nowhere. To add to this, he's stationed in California. She's in DC. He's currently underway on a ship, and I won't hear from him for 3 weeks. The inner narrative I gave myself was brutal. I was in full breakup mode. I could see that he received a text on WhatsApp, but he wouldn't reply, or his Apple Watch would connect and share activity, but I wouldn't even get a heart emoji or a like on a pic I sent. WTF. I was convinced we were done. Forget all the logic as to why that was ridiculous. And then I talked to him Monday night. 3 weeks of overthinking, anxiety, and panic attacks just disappeared like it never happened. Just hearing his voice and giving me the most simple reassurance shifted my entire outlook on life. How the hell do you snap out of that? Okay, Jenny from the block. I'm going to give you the simple piece and just elaborate on that a little bit more. You snap out of it by not snapping in to the pattern. What? You snap out of it by not snapping into a pattern because you're in a pattern, girl. I love you. And how do I know? Okay. And by the way, I don't actually know. I'm only going to just talk from what I see here in the written word. And I also just have to say, and I preface this more in ways I work with clients. And if you've sent me a message on the DMs and Instagram, you already know what I'm going to say is I don't have all the context. And so I only have a couple of sentences here that really tell me a very small portion of the dynamic between you and him. So just forewarned is forearmed. And so I'm going to answer based on what I know and what are the facts from what you have written. So the first thing that you said is he's good to you. And honestly, the things you're telling me tell me that he is good to you. And so I say this with love, but you're the drama. I mean, you're like, love you, but you're the drama. And what I mean by snap out, by not snapping in, is the pattern that you're in is he is reassuring you. That is called external validation. Now, don't get me wrong. It is, of course, nice when somebody says, you're pretty. Like, Craig tells me I'm pretty, right? Like, it's okay to get that validation and to want that validation. But when we are depending and needing the validation is a different story. And it looks like to me you got a little dependent. You got a little hooked on that. And it can honestly, when you're getting that external validation, it can feel like you're getting an itch scratched. And I'm going to say this. I made a TikTok about this, but I'm not sure how it's hitting. But getting your like trigger satisfied by that external validation is like, it's like scratching an itch. And also here's just something else to think about. And I'm going to relate to some of you that are listening to the podcast is, doesn't it feel good when you talk to the friend and you talk to 5 friends, you listen to the podcast, you look up a blog post, whatever, and then like it's very short-lived. Sound familiar? Yeah? That's because you're trying to validate your experience externally. And you found somebody who is lovely and is doing that, but then the moment you're not getting the drug, you start scratching yourself and jonesing like a freaking junkie. And here's what happens when we don't get that external validation. We don't, when it's removed from us for whatever reason. He was on a boat for 3 weeks. My God. Like, and this is also why, even though logically you knew that, subconsciously the itch was like needing to be scratched, and you were just like, you got claw marks all over yourself, right? And the reality is, if we are constantly needing that external validation, we are trying to soothe ourselves with something externally. Hint, hint. And this, I'm gonna just should have said this before, but trigger warning: if we are going to substances to make us feel better, that is a form of external validation. And to me, honestly, and if you know, you know, and if you're here at this point and to this part of the episode, you get it. It can feel like the craziness that can happen internally, the flail can be like a junkie. I love Intervention. That's one of my favorite shows. And people will sell their souls. They will steal money from their parents. They will, they will do anything to get what they think is their fix. And anxious attachment, those symptoms act exactly the same. External validation can act the same way. This is why it's like an addiction, because you can keep getting it and getting and getting, and your threshold gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you need more validation to fix it. That's why finding somebody secure isn't going to solve it, because eventually you're going to, I say this with like so much love, but people get tapped out. They do. If you just keep going to a person for money for your fix, at a certain point, like, either they're going to just say no more, or the bank account's going to be dry. You know what I mean? So when we look at how do you stop it, you snap out of it by not snapping in. It's how healing the addiction to the external validation, which can, I'm hoping this resonates with some of you that feel this way. So that's my loving reminder for Jen. And Jen, we're working on it. We're in the Healing Girl Gang, and I can't wait to keep diving in. Maybe you're in level 2. I think I'm not sure if I've seen your name in there, but just know that whether you are in the Healing Girl Gang, listening to the podcast, no action's ever wasted. And I really believe in you. And just remember, you can snap out of it by not playing into the addiction. Okay? And hey, breaking an addiction takes support. And that's just the truth. Okay, angels, I'll see you on the flip side. Mwah!